My lazy parents discovered my new salary before I even got a moment to celebrate it. One second, I was staring at the promotion email in shock, and the next, they were banging on my apartment door like collectors sent to demand payment. I should have realized something was wrong the moment I saw their forced smiles, the cheap store-bought cake, the way they didn't even bother to say congratulations. They didn't ask how I felt. They only wanted one thing. How much do you make now? And then, with the boldness of people who had done absolutely nothing to earn it, they demanded 50% of it. But what happened next, they never expected. My name is Jessica Hale, and for most of my life, I've carried myself with a quiet discipline, the kind you develop when you grow up knowing no one is coming to rescue you. I left home at 18 with 2 suitcases, a scholarship, and a single promise to myself. I would never owe anyone anything again, especially not my parents. I worked late-night shifts, studied on bus rides, and built my career piece by piece until the day I finally became a senior financial analyst at a private firm in Pittsburgh. People who meet me now say I look composed. Long dark hair, clean lines in my clothes, the calm confidence of someone who carved out her own place. But they never see the years behind it, the years of being told I owed my parents for existing, the guilt, the emotional bills they kept like written receipts. So when they showed up at my apartment uninvited that night, all those years came flooding back. My mom, Marlene, stepped in first. She always did. A cloud of heavy perfume hit me before her practiced smile did, the kind she used on church ladies when she wanted pity. Dad followed behind her, hands shoved into his jacket pockets like he was hiding something. They dropped the plastic cake on my counter as if it were an offering, but their eyes were already scanning my apartment, calculating everything I owned. "So," Mom said as she slid into a chair at my tiny kitchen table, "your salary went up quite a bit." She didn't ask about my day. She didn't even pretend to care. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Yes, I've worked a long time for it." Dad let out a low whistle. "You're doing well, Jess. Better than us, and after everything we've done." He left the sentence hanging like bait, the same line I had heard my entire childhood. Every meal, every ride, every school form logged like debts I owed them. Mom leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We think it's fair that you contribute to the household, 50% of your monthly income, just until we get back on our feet." They said it like it was a duty, a responsibility, a bill I'd somehow forgotten to pay. My chest tightened, my shoulders instinctively squared. Old habits, old armor. Because in that moment, the truth landed. This wasn't a request, it was a collection call. I stared at them across the kitchen table I'd bought with my own overtime money, the same table they never helped me pay for, move, or even assemble. Mom tapped her nails on the surface, impatient, like she was waiting for a server to take her order. Dad leaned back, smug, as if the decision had already been made on my behalf. "That's not how this works," I finally said. Mom's smile stiffened. "Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. Families support each other." "Support goes both ways," I replied. Dad scoffed. "We raised you, fed you, gave you a roof. You wouldn't be where you are without us." There it was, the same script, word for word, the line they used every time they wanted something. Textbooks, rent money, holiday gifts they couldn't afford but insisted I should pay for. Back then, I never had the backbone to fight back, but tonight, something inside me finally cracked. "You left home at 18, Mom snapped. "We didn't question you. You just walked out, and now you act like we owe you explanations?" I felt my jaw clench. "I left because every time I tried to breathe, you turned it into a debt." A flicker passed over her face, first irritation, then anger. "You're ungrateful." Ungrateful, her favorite accusation. Dad leaned forward. This isn't optional, Jess. 50%, starting next month. You make good money. We deserve to benefit after all we sacrificed. You didn't sacrifice, I said, quietly. You survived. There's a difference. Dad's tone sharpened. We are your parents. You owe us. Something in me snapped clean. I stood, not with drama, not with force, just slow, deliberate, final. The chair scraped softly against the floor, a sound that felt like a closing door. Their eyes followed me as I walked to the counter. My shoulders were rigid, my breath uneven, but my voice came out calm. You came here tonight for one reason, not to celebrate me, not to be proud. You came to take. Mom's brows knit together. Dad's expression shifted, just enough to show a hint of unease. I opened a drawer and took out the envelope I had prepared weeks ago, long before I knew I'd need it. I turned back, holding it between two fingers. This, I said, is everything you're really looking for. They didn't know it yet, but that moment, that was where the real story began. Mom's eyes locked onto the envelope like a crow spotting something shiny. Dad straightened, clearing his throat as if he were about to accept an award. They thought they'd worn me down, cornered me into surrender. They had no idea the ground beneath them was already shifting. I set the envelope gently on the table. Mom reached for it instantly, but I placed my hand over hers, light, firm. Her eyes widened. Before you open it, I said, you need to understand something. You don't get to walk into my home and demand half my life. Not anymore. Mom yanked her hand back. It's just money, Jessica. Don't be theatrical, Dad muttered. She's always been dramatic, always thought she knew better. I ignored him, stepping back and brushing my palms against my slacks. My heart hammered, but my voice stayed steady, controlled in a way that seemed to unsettle even me. Mom pulled the envelope toward her. If this is your attempt at acting tough, it's not, I said. It's clarity. Their brows pulled together, confused but still smug. That arrogant confidence only people with nothing to lose ever seem to carry. Jessica, we're your parents, Dad insisted. This attitude of yours, it's what separates you from the rest of us. You think you're above us now? I think, I replied, that boundaries aren't disrespect. Dad scoffed. Mom shook her head. You've been brainwashed by those career people. You forgot who raised you. I didn't argue. Arguing with them was a treadmill. Endless movement, zero progress. Instead, I picked up my phone and stepped aside. Dana answered on the second ring. Everything okay? I watched my parents hovering over the envelope. It's time, I said. Her tone sharpened. Then stick to the plan. Let them reveal themselves. I hung up and leaned against the counter, arms folded. The dynamic in the room shifted, subtle but decisive. Mom sensed it too. Her eyes narrowed. What plan? She demanded. You'll see, I said quietly. The envelope sat between them like a silent warning they still didn't recognize. Mom finally tore it open. Papers slid out, crisp, notarized, unmistakable. Not money, not an apology, not surrender. Just the truth. A truth they had willingly signed themselves into years ago. As they read the first page, their smirks faded, their fingers stilled, their confidence drained into a heavy, brittle silence. And in that perfect suspended moment, they finally understood this wasn't unfolding the way they imagined. For a few seconds, the only sound in my kitchen was the low hum of the refrigerator. Mom's eyes skimmed the page once, then again, then a third time, each pass pulling more color from her face. Dad blinked rapidly, as though the words were blurring on purpose. The same hands that had reached for the envelope with such greedy confidence now trembled above the table.
This isn't real, Mom whispered. Oh, it's real, I said. Your signatures are at the bottom. Dad squinted. We didn't sign this. We would never— You did, I replied. 3 years ago. Remember when you told me you wanted to protect my future? When you insisted on drawing up a declaration so I wouldn't be responsible for your financial decisions? I tapped the page lightly. This is that document. Mom searched her memory for an escape hatch. We didn't know what we were signing. You understood enough to force it on me, I said. You understood enough to brag to people that you were proud I was standing on my own 2 feet. But now that you want money, suddenly it's invalid. The silence that followed was uneven and heavy, like a table with one broken leg. Dad slammed the papers down. This doesn't mean anything. It means everything, I said. Legally, financially, morally. You have no claim to my income. You never did. Mom gripped the edges of the papers as if holding them tighter might change the words printed on them. We didn't raise you to be this cruel, she said, her voice cracking into that familiar performance. Cruel, I repeated. You demanded 50% of my salary on the night I achieved something you never supported. You walked into my home and treated me like a paycheck. And now you want to call me cruel? Dad pushed his chair back and stood, pointing a trembling finger at me. Don't talk to your mother like that. I stepped closer. Then stop treating me like a wallet. For the first time in my life, he had no response. His mouth moved, but only empty air came out. Mom slammed the papers onto the table. We'll take this to court, she snapped. If you think a few pieces of paper will stop us. You already did, I said. Their heads jerked up. What? Dad demanded. You already filed a petition, I said calmly, a parental support petition. I received the notice 2 days ago. Mom's face went slack. Dad froze like someone had hit the pause button. They hadn't expected me to find out so quickly, and they certainly didn't expect me to say it out loud. And before you ask, I added, yes, I saw the fake messages you submitted, the ones supposedly from me promising monthly payments. The phone number was 1 digit off mine. I tilted my head. Sloppy. Mom's breath hitched. Dad stepped back. You committed fraud, I said. You took this beyond entitlement. You turned it into a crime. Mom dug through her purse with frantic hands. We can explain. You'll get the chance, I replied, in front of a judge. Dad's voice rose, cracking. You wouldn't do that to your own parents. All you already did to your own daughter, I said quietly. All I'm doing now is defending myself. Right then, the door buzzer sounded, 3 sharp chimes. Dad jumped. Mom gasped. I didn't move. Footsteps echoed in the hallway a moment later. 2 women entered when I opened the door. Dana, in her sharp camel coat, and an officer holding a folder. Mom backed away like the room itself was closing in. Evening, Dana said, calm as a surgeon. We have documents for the Hales. The officer stepped forward. Marlene and Richard Hale? Mom shook her head violently. This is unnecessary. We can talk, Jessica. Tell them, I said. The officer nodded. You're being served regarding fraudulent evidence submitted in a civil petition and attempts to coerce financial support under false pretenses. Dad's knees nearly buckled. You can't do this. We're family. Dana glanced at him. Family is not a shield when you break the law. Mom's voice shot into a high-pitched panic. She trapped us. She planned this. That envelope, she set us up. That envelope, Dana said evenly, contains a notarized declaration you both willingly signed. You cannot claim ignorance now. Dad lurched forward, voice cracking. We needed that money, and she needed parents. And all she ever got, Dana cut in, were debt collectors. The words struck the room like a slap. Mom pressed her hands to her face, sobbing in dramatic, choking gasps. Dad gripped the back of a chair before his legs gave out completely. The officer handed them the papers. You'll receive your court date within the next week. When the door closed behind them, the apartment felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window in a house sealed shut for years. But it wasn't over. The courtroom was cold on the morning of the hearing, too bright, too sterile.
My parents sat at one table, pale and slumped. Mom's eyes were red, swollen from hours of crying. Dad stared into his lap, jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. Dana stood beside me with quiet confidence. When the judge read the list of accusations, Mom burst into immediate tears. "Your Honor, we only wanted our daughter to help us. We're in such a difficult place. She abandoned us." Dana stepped forward. "Your Honor, if I may." She approached with a stack of documents. "The petitioners own property in this city and receive steady retirement income. Their claim of hardship is false." Then she lifted the fake messages. "These are fabricated. The number does not belong to Miss Hale, and we have phone carrier records to confirm it." The judge examined the papers, expression darkening. Mom sobbed louder. Dad muttered under his breath, "This is ridiculous." Then the courtroom door opened. Beatrice, my grandmother, walked in slowly with her cane. The entire room fell silent. She took the stand with hands that didn't shake and a voice sharp enough to slice through the air. Jessica asked for nothing from these two. She left home at 18 and built her own life. They never supported her. They drained her. She owes them nothing. Mom's sobs snapped into a gasp. "Mom, how could you?" Grandma didn't look at her. Truth matters more than blood. The judge leaned back and exhaled. Given the fraudulent evidence, the lack of demonstrated hardship, and the testimony provided, this petition is dismissed. Furthermore, the court is imposing a fine for the submission of falsified materials. Mom crumpled in her seat. Dad stared straight ahead, stunned and hollow. Dana squeezed my arm, not in celebration, but in acknowledgement. A quiet victory. Outside, the sunlight washed over me like warmth I hadn't felt in years. I tilted my face upward, inhaling deeply, letting years of weight fall off my shoulders. Behind me, my parents stood frozen on the courthouse steps, small, defeated, speechless, just like the envelope promised. The week after the hearing felt strangely quiet, as if someone had turned down the volume on my entire life. No buzzing notifications, no guilt-soaked messages, no sudden knocks on my door, just silence, the kind I didn't realize I had been craving for years. I moved out of my old apartment and into a smaller place near downtown Pittsburgh, high enough that the city noise softened into a gentle hum. I filled the space slowly, a blue velvet chair from a thrift shop, a lamp with a warm amber glow, a tiny cactus that somehow refused to die. For the first time, every corner of my home felt like it belonged to me and only me. 3 days after I settled, a birthday card arrived in the mail. Thin, beige, with neat handwriting I recognized instantly. Beatrice. Inside, just one line. "You chose truth over fear. I'm proud of you." I held the card against my chest for a moment. No theatrics, no guilt, just love. The quiet kind. But peace never stays untouched for long. A week later, another envelope slid under my door. My name scratched across the front in shaky letters, my mother's handwriting. I opened it slowly, bracing myself. It wasn't an apology. It never is with people who don't believe they've done anything wrong. Instead, it was a list: medical complaints, emotional appeals, and finally a request for money to help him through a difficult time. No mention of the court case, no mention of the false evidence, just expectation wrapped in pity. I folded the letter once, then again, tucked it back into the envelope, and placed it in the trash. My hands didn't shake. That same week, another call came, one I wasn't ready for. Beatrice had passed peacefully in her sleep. For a moment, the world dimmed, but it didn't break. Her attorney later told me she'd left me her small home near Greensburg. I didn't keep it. I sold it and donated the money to a local group supporting women recovering from financial abuse. It felt right. One quiet evening, I stood by my window, the city lights stretching across the river like scattered gold. For the first time, I wasn't replaying arguments, rehearsing apologies, or bracing for impact. I was simply free. That evening, I walked down to the river, letting the cool Pittsburgh air settle gently against my skin. The water moved slowly, steady and unhurried, like it had all the time in the world. And maybe, finally, I did too. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Quiet, earned, unburdened. I thought about that envelope, the one my parents opened with so much expectation. It didn't hold money, it held the truth, the first boundary I ever set without apologizing for it. If you've ever had to choose peace over guilt, if you've ever had to protect yourself from the people who should have loved you most, tell me your story in the comments. And if you want more real stories about courage and reclaiming your life, make sure to subscribe.